please feel free to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. My name is Cornell. I'm a semi-professional session musician, drummer, bass player, and I've done various other instruments, dabbled with in the past. Some of my achievements in music include playing as the house band drummer for The Last Leg on Channel 4, which was an incredible experience. I've played across the globe in various different organizations and with various different bands, sometimes to thousands of people live. I absolutely love it. And I've played on Romania's Got Talent before as well. So I played there a couple of years ago, and that was an excellent experience playing on television, as well as playing on various other different television shows for house band work, as well as live work as well. I've got endorsements from certain drummers who approve of my style and approve of my playing, including Michael Jackson's drummer, actually, the drummer who played with Michael Jackson. He's supported me and endorsed a lot of my videos, and I'm always open to opportunities to play further, but I've got a pretty good back catalogue of things that I've done already.
Well, let's take a look at some of your work from your Twitter profile, and then we'll get on with the rest of our chat.
All right, can't complain. Stuck at home, but aren't we all? Yeah, pretty much the usual. Yeah, exactly. How are you, Cameron? How are you? Let's try it. Let's try it. It's a bit of a cliche, but I do have a wide variety taste at the moment. So I mean, it's gone from all sorts that I've played that I've played and listened to in the past. So I like a lot of sort of 90s alternative stuff. So Red Hot Chili Peppers, Pearl Jam, some of Incubus's earlier stuff. Sort of those sorts of bands, as well as Audio Slave with Chris Cornell was a bit of a legend in my eyes, and people like that. But also I like all sorts. So I've liked a lot of the hip hop stuff as well. So I enjoy Jay-Z, Lupe Fiasco, people like that as well, and that's quite fun to play on drums as well. Some of these guys' songs. So yeah, it's kind of varied. More recently, Anderson .Paak and Free Nationals and people like that. So yeah, I've had a lot of love for a lot of different music over the years. So yeah, pretty flexible. I think it was 19 or 18. It was one of the two, wasn't it? Yeah. Check that out. Yeah. So I haven't done a music blog for a little while, actually, but it's something that often I like to sort of vent my thoughts in more than 140 characters or however many it is on 280, how many it is on Twitter. And you can't do it on pictures on Instagram so much, and Facebook sadly seems to be a dying art form. I like sharing sort of insights that people might not know about being a musician, being disabled, and the combination of being a disabled musician, because actually I think some of my viewpoints might actually surprise some people. I'm not one of these sort of activists that's there all the time to educate, everyone needs to know better, that sort of thing. That's not really what I'm about, although if I can shed some light on some maybe new views that people have, then that's a real bonus. And I think, like I said, my views sometimes surprise people on my own personal experiences of disability in music and others in the wider experience as well. Yeah, so I'll tell you about my story. So my story essentially started when I was born into Romania, into communist Romania. It was just after Ceausescu's rule, the dictator over there, and essentially the viewpoint of the establishment was that disabled people were on similar level to animals, basically. So anybody born with a disability was placed in an orphanage or left and abandoned, and there was a lot of shame for parents when that happened, basically. So I was born with no lower arms and a twisted right leg, and the doctor essentially expected me to die. I don't have a Romanian birth certificate for that reason, and I was taken from my parents by the doctors and placed in an orphanage, essentially just left there. And cut a few years down the line, two aid workers from the UK, Doreen and Ken Munn, who were now my adopted parents, but I'll get onto that. I'll get onto that. Saw me in the orphanage, and they were asked if there was anything that could be done for me in the UK because of my twisted leg, essentially, whether there could be treatment for that. So I was the orphanage staff asked if the aid workers could bring me to the UK for any treatment. I was born with a twisted right leg, and essentially it was going to be amputation realistically, but they brought me over to the UK, and I was offered an amputation, and I had that, but on the condition that I remained in England until I was fully grown, essentially. And following that, the decision was that Doreen and Ken, the aid workers, eventually adopted me. They had 4 kids of their own previously, but they eventually adopted me. So I was brought over to the UK when I was a year and a half, not very old at all. Shameful I don't speak any Romanian, unfortunately. I don't have Romanian citizenship or anything like that. But I was brought over to the UK, and yeah, they adopted me, and I had artificial legs growing up. I still have them now, obviously. I still have them now, which is great. And I was brought up in a really loving home, and it was beneficial in the sense that also I was in touch with my Romanian parents. It was obviously not their fault that I was taken to an orphanage. I was taken from them, essentially. And there's a bit, when I've been interviewed before by various people, they like to have, TV shows like to have this abandonment narrative that my parents gave me away, and that's just not true. That's just not what happened at all. And I don't want to do them disservice like that. My biological mum, for example, she was at my wedding. We have a good relationship. She was at my wedding 3 years ago, and it's a good relationship. There's no hostility there. It was just what the state was at the time, and I was fortunate enough to have a better life. So I was brought over from there, and yeah, from there it's been go, 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 really. So yeah, brought up in great loving home, had mainstream school education, primary, secondary, sixth form, college, etc. Secured a place at Oxford, did a degree in philosophy and theology there. So
Wow.
that was a few years ago now, and I've worked in various different roles, like recruitment and a lot of disability stuff at the moment. So I've worked in disability for the last, I don't know how many years now, a few years going back. So amongst all of that, as much as I find my current job quite rewarding, I run a disability access department essentially for a local council, which I do enjoy it a lot. So that's for a county council, but underneath all that was my music. So when I first started secondary school when I was 11 years old, I was asked if I wanted to learn an instrument essentially, and I didn't know what I could go for. And quite simply, I went to play drums because I thought that would be one thing that I could actually do, basically. I didn't know how I could branch out. I didn't really have any, not interest in music. I didn't really have any, shown no musical ability beforehand, particularly, but drums seemed to be something I could probably do. It didn't seem the easiest, but it seemed like something I could do. So learned to play drums, started learning drums when I was 11 years old and never really looked back after that. So I had about 6 months of lessons, 6 months to a year's worth of lessons, and then went self-taught because of the cost of lessons was too much, essentially. So I started teaching myself and teaching others after that first year. And then 3 years down the line, I realized I could probably play a few more instruments maybe. So I remember I had some drum gear and I sold a cymbal, I remember. And with the profits I had from a cymbal sale, I bought a bass guitar and I taught myself how to play bass that about 3 years later. So yeah, 15, 20 years down the line, and I'm a drummer and a bass player and an upright bass player, and do a bit of mixing and producing, although my mixing's a bit rusty, and I'm always on the lookout to learn new things. So I've got a trombone sat in my front room, which hasn't been used yet, but I need to try and learn that. And hopefully a banjo on the way soon that somebody's kindly donated to me. I played a little bit before and I quite enjoy the sound. So a bit of variation, but I think drums is my main thing, but also bass as well. Actually, my drum set, I don't really require any additional equipment on it at all. So I'll show my arms here. I've got no lower arms on here. What I do use is something that helps me hold the sticks. So on my left arm, I can hold it in. I've got a little digit on here, and I can hold the stick in there and vary the sensitivity and vary the dynamics with that. But on my right arm, I don't have anything. So I have a strap which goes around sort of here, and there's a stick that's held in there. And that's it, really. That's the only thing I use that's additional. My kit setup looks a little bit different, but there's no additional equipment. So I play what you'd call a right-handed lead drummer, but because my left foot is the real one, essentially, and my right foot is the artificial one, I want a quicker bass drum pattern. So I play a little bit reverse. So I play like an open-handed hi-hat setup and a left foot on the bass drum, basically. So there's no additional tech with that, just a slightly different moved around kit and a strap for my arm. And with bass, there's no additional tech at all whatsoever. So bass, I hold the fretboard with this left arm on there, and it's in there, and just I've got a little bit of a curve on my right arm over, underneath there,
Yeah.
and that allows me to pluck, slap, all sorts of things on there. So yeah, no additional tech really. Honestly, I don't know that. I've not really thought about it, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
I know there more recently I've explored the opportunities of different instruments with different tech, but it's actually not something that interests me vastly. I'd rather just do it with what's there and work with what's there, to be honest. And different tech for different instruments is great. I think it's a great innovation for a lot of things, and it allows a lot of people to play. It's just for me personally, I've never really had that sort of interest other than minimal adaptations, such as a strap on my arm, for example. And when I'm, if I ever learn the banjo properly, I'll have a strap which has like the banjo pick on the bottom of it. But other than that, I've got no real desire for additional musical instrument tech. I mean, I like gear as much as it is. I love new instruments and things like that. I'm always looking at drums and basses and various nice pieces of musical equipment. Don't need anything else really. I've been quite fortunate actually, in that I've been encouraged pretty much all the way through, which is great. And I know a lot of disabled people and disabled musicians don't have that. And I think it's excellent to have had that support that I've had both from family and friends and various teachers and other musicians that I've played with. So actually, I'm quite fortunate about that. I'm not here to say that people have tried to stop me and I've overcome all odds. I don't think that's the case at all. I found learning music relatively easy, and I found it been relatively encouraged from all sides. And I'm not here to say they tried to hold me back, but they didn't. This isn't a story of overcoming adversity when it comes to music. I really don't think it is. Whereas a lot of people do think it is. I think that's one of the misunderstandings that comes up actually about social issues in music. People think I've had to fight this vast battle to learn and to adapt my way of thinking and to battle against the odds and against people. And that's just not been the case. I've been really supported, which is great. And I know not everybody is, but a lot of people are more supportive of it than you think, especially if you show some prowess in it, to be honest with you, especially if you can demonstrate that you can actually do it and possibly be good at it. So that's the one thing. I think when it comes to certain things, it's being paid is an interesting one when you come to being a disabled musician. So I have been fortunate enough to play paid gigs. So I've played various paid live gigs. I was the house band drummer on Channel 4's The Last Leg, which was a real incredible experience. So that,
No
it
way.
was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing. That was
Oh
one
my
of my
God,
highlights.
that's class.
Yeah, one of my career highlights, and I was paid for that as anybody would be,
Yeah.
for my service. But I think actually, Channel 4 and The Last Leg have a fantastic attitude toward disability and towards the social issues surrounding it. In the same way, I've played overseas and I've played in Barcelona and some various big venues there and various other places across the world. And generally, they're quite good at paying, but a lot of it's the underlying social attitude. So when I talk on either my socials or my blogs or things like that about, you know what, I'm enjoying my music, but it'd be nice to get paid once in a while. It'd be nice to, make some money off these views or do these sorts of things. Some of the comments back are a bit worrying about the sort of general populace that say things like, you don't need the money, your inspiration is enough. You being an inspiration is reward enough for other people and things like that. And I just think to myself, imagine if I wasn't a disabled musician. Imagine if I wasn't a musician, I was doing another profession. I mean, I do work full time, so I completely understand this. And they just said, oh, you don't need to be paid for this. Your exposure and your work and your inspiration to others should be reward enough for you. It's not going to pay the bills. It's not going to be rewarding enough, is it, after a little while? I mean, that's one of the social issues that seems to come up. They seem to think that a lot of people seem to think that disabled people are there for inspiration and almost for your own entertainment or things like that, but a lot of the time not willing to put money where their mouth is, essentially. And that's quite a troubling social attitude that is kind of underlying. I mean, if you ask somebody on the street and they said a disabled musician was doing the same job as a non-disabled musician and say, should they be paid the same? People would say, of course they are. Absolutely. I think most people would say, of course they should be paid the same, should be paid for their work. But it's more an undercurrent of thinking, I think, sort of underlying attitude that actually this inspiration should be rewarded enough. It's like my expectation should be lower. It's like I should expect, almost subconsciously should expect lower. And that's, I think, has been an issue that's come up over the years in my music and things that I've done. So that's one thing, I think, social issues wise about the payment. There are many others as well. So when it comes to social issues that come up, so a lot of this has moved online at the moment. I got a bit nostalgic about this a little while ago. So I used to miss the days when playing a local venue was sort of the holy grail of what you could do. And then you played that venue and, maybe someone spotted you there, or maybe you just become regular there, become a bit of a hometown hero. And the live show was really the be all and end all for young up and coming musicians. And I loved that because I grew up in that sort of environment just before. I mean, obviously we had the internet and broadband, but before fast internet came in, uploading videos was just impossible.
Yeah.
I was playing music live in local venues and I loved it, and sometimes national venues. And again, I loved it. I adored it. But then you move to socials and you have to get with the time. So I've done that. So I've got a fairly prolific YouTube channel and a lot of Instagram followers as well as some other socials. And then you notice, obviously, that is open to comments and keyboard warriors and things like that. And that's a very interesting sort of analysis you could do on that, as a whole piece, to be honest. But the comments aren't necessarily negative. I'm not here to say, oh, everyone trolls me or it's all bad or things like that. That's not true at all. The vast majority are, again, supportive. And I love that. And I got a really loyal set of followers who are excellent supporters of mine. And I'm really grateful for that as well. You do get the odd troll comment, but there's so few and far between, they don't bother me. And as far as social issues go, I just block them because I don't want to give them the platform. I don't usually engage. Sometimes I might try and give like a smart response back, and then that's a bit of a name and shame because that usually gets some traction. But usually, if it's ignorant enough, I just don't give the time of day on my platform. I'm not censoring free speech. It's my platform. I can choose what I put on there, what I want, quite frankly, So, but regards to the comments of that, some of the social issues that arise from that is generally comments are supportive and good, and the opinions are supportive and good without either any constructive criticism or without any support or encouragement beyond the fact that he's disabled, he can do it at all. There's no sort of analysis into what's good, into what about it is good, what about it is worthy of note, other than the disability side of things. And in that sort of way, there isn't much constructive criticism that comes through either. And I know on some of my videos and some of the things I do, it deserves it, quite frankly. I don't think I'm the best musician in the world, but I love what I do, and I think I have reached quite a good level. But there are things I can work on, definitely. And it's interesting to see that socially, people don't seem to acknowledge that either. So it's a difficult thing to do. And when people do come in to criticize, it's either unwarranted. So sometimes I get criticized for overplaying on certain songs, and I have to reply back, I can understand why they said that, but at the same time, if I was playing that song with a band, I would never play as overplaying as I do on the recording. But as a disabled person, quite frankly, I have to prove that I can do stuff, and you have to play a bit more dramatically and a bit more interestingly. Otherwise, you just get lost in the sea of things. I think there's a bigger burden of proof on disabled people, especially when they're doing things which are seen as exceptional or different, to demonstrate they can do these things well and do these things correctly and to a really high standard. And sometimes it is in comparison, so sometimes they can do these things as good or better than people without disabilities who aren't disabled. So that's another social issue that comes up with a sort of, they're blind to what's actually being played. It's just, this is a disabled person playing music, wow, support, amazing, move on. Nothing comes from that. And that can be limiting in terms of opportunities. It can be limiting in terms of what I'm doing and how to improve and various things like that. So that's another side of the social issue. A few elements of my music are misunderstood, actually. I think it's really looking at when I get criticism for overplaying, for example. I don't get it very often, which is fortunate. I get quite a lot of supportive comments, but I do get some criticism for overplaying my instruments, whether it's drums or bass, whatever that looks like. And I can understand why that comes in, because sometimes I do play a little bit more elaborate than a song requires. But there's a reason behind that, because I firmly believe that disabled people have something more of a burden of proof to show what they can do. And actually, as much as playing a groove is a skill in itself, just a simple backbeat groove is a skill in itself. I think that it's more difficult to play more flamboyant, more interesting parts, more interesting lines to a song, or more interesting solos, or whatever that looks like. And it is quite simply more difficult to do so than keeping a groove. I can keep a groove on songs. It's something which I've learned to do. And if I was playing the song with a live band, or, you know, in a real situation, of course I wouldn't overplay. I'd sit back and play the groove and play what the song required. I've had lots of skills and lots of lessons in that from playing with various different musicians, and I love to do that. So the reason I sometimes seem like I'm overplaying on my videos is, quite frankly, a disabled person, I think, has more of a burden of proof that they can do more, they can play more technical things, and you have to show that in the music that you play sometimes. So I think that element of my music is somewhat understood, why I do play a little bit more flamboyantly, or in somewhat either interesting or intricate or technical, or whatever you want to call it, different lines on a song. I will play that instead of a more simple groove, because I think disabled people need to prove that more often than not. I think there's another element of my music which is somewhat misunderstood, and that comes in two parts. It's the whole hard work in the face of adversity thing, and the whole "you're so motivational, how do you do it" type thing. And there's two sides of the same coin, really. So I'll start with the whole hard work in the face of adversity sort of thing. Actually, I've been fortunate to have a lot of support with my music. A lot of people have encouraged me along the way. I've had lots of good playing opportunities. I'm always looking for more. I'm definitely always looking for more. That's not something I'm shying away from, but I'm grateful for what I've had so far. And it's not really been a battle of hard work in the case of adversity. Like I said, I took to drums and bass pretty quickly. I became quite good at it, quite frankly. And I think that people think I've practiced, 27, 28 hours a day. Not possible, obviously, but people think I have to practice 27, 28 hours a day.
Anything's possible
just to,
in 2020. If they
yeah.
extended the working day to 28 hours, then I could believe it's happening.
Some days feel like 28 hours, quite frankly, when working from home. Anyway, yeah. People think I just practice all this extra amount, and that's not the case. I am actually, when it comes to musical practice, I love playing. I do. I'm not trying to devalue that, but I could practice a lot more than I do. I mean, at the moment, for various reasons, my kit is packed away. That's not a permanent thing. I'm definitely going to get back to it, but it has to be at the moment due to various house moves and things like that. But I hardly practice at all. But when I do get behind a kit, I can still do it. I can still remember it. Obviously, I'm not devaluing the value of practice. I think it's a really important thing. But as a disabled person, I've not had to practice any more to get good at music than somebody who isn't disabled. And that's, I think, a common misconception that people have. I've had to work much harder and put in all this effort and things like that. I really haven't. I mean, I work hard as a musician because I love what I do, but I really don't see myself working harder than people without disabilities, quite frankly. I really don't see that. And I think that's misunderstood. And I think that comes in with the whole motivational thing. People think because I'm disabled that I have this extra level of motivation to do these things and to push these things because I've had to push all my life. And okay, I've had to work around certain things and work out different solutions. But I mean, I give myself a bit of credit for some intelligence. I think that I'm quite a good problem solver, so I've been able to do that. So I'm very much a case of work smarter, not harder, quite frankly, when it comes to these sorts of things. And in line with motivation, I get tired and lazy and don't want to do certain things and sit on the sofa and binge watch television for 6 hours as much as the next person does who doesn't have a disability, who isn't disabled. And I think that's reflected in my music as well. So I am motivated because I want to, I want to make it. I want to keep playing. I want to get musical endorsement deals. I want to do all these things. I really do. And I'm really driven to do it. But I don't think my disability has anything to do with that. And I think that can be quite harmful when people think that, because it can look like that I have to be hardworking and motivated if I want to be as good as somebody who isn't disabled. And I don't think that's true. I think that you can be musically talented and that you don't have to work harder. Sometimes you do, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have that natural talent as well. And I think that people misunderstand that, and a big misunderstanding and misconception about my music and disability music in general is that having a disability makes it harder to play music. I don't necessarily always think it does. Because of the connection to my shoulder for my short right arm, I have a much quicker reaction on my right arm rolls than a lot of people would who use hands and wrist motions. And people just don't expect that. So actually, I don't necessarily think that playing music, if you're disabled, has to be harder. I think that can be a harmful or incorrect assumption. So I think that's another misconception, things that people don't understand necessarily about my music. And I understand why, but it's just not true some of the times. And that's some of the things I like to cover in what I do. think the misconception should be changed. How that happens is at an attitudinal level, and I think is from a young age. So more education on it in schools and various things like that is helpful. I think more education on it from a musical level is also helpful too. So seeing great disabled musicians, great disabled artists, whatever that looks like, I think is very helpful. I actually think there's a uniqueness in something which I'm talking about, which isn't always, I mean, I don't know if I'm the only person saying this, but I think I don't see many people who are disabled or who work in disability or things like that, just saying simple things like, it's not always harder with a disability. It's not always motivated. Disabled people are not always inspirational. Disabled people are not always, I don't necessarily like the term superhuman that comes from the the Paralympics, a lot of things like that. I mean, I like the Paralympics, obviously. I like what goes on there, and I like a lot of what's gone on with that attitudinal wise. I think Channel 4 again and various other organizations have done fantastic work on that with the last leg and things like that. Have done great work on the Paralympics coverage. But a lot of these people aren't superhumans. They're just athletic disabled people. It's a bit patronizing to say that they're superhumans, I think. They're just doing what other athletic people can do who aren't disabled. In the same way of disabled musicians, we're just doing the same as what we can do with people that aren't disabled. And I mean, a lot of people like to try and recruit me to talk to them about motivation and overcoming adversity and things like that. And they're a bit surprised. I think I mentioned this before. They're a bit surprised when I come out about the sort of motivation in hard working in adversity. When I say, it's not been that hard. It's not always that hard for disabled people. Treat them like normal. Treat them because they are normal.
Yeah.
Or what is normal anyway is another thing.
What is normal in 2020?
They will give, if they say they exactly, yeah. And if they say they can deliver results and they can play music, then let them play music. Quite frankly, it's an easy thing to do, and I think that's something which needs to change. This attitude of I'm not doing this to inspire people. I'm doing this because I enjoy doing it primarily.
Yeah.
And I'm also doing this to get opportunities and, because I love to do it and would like to play more for more people, whether that's paid, whether that's live performances, whether that's recorded performances, whatever that looks like. I'm doing that to do more of it, pretty much what every other musician is doing so. And I've been fortunate enough to do it semi-professionally over the years, and I want to keep doing that, which is excellent. But yeah, I don't wake up every morning and think, who am I going to inspire today? I don't do that. I don't think exactly. I don't think many disabled people, many people do that. And I think the term inspiration is so hollow these days. I think I'll give you an example of why I think inspiration is hollow, in that I've been called inspirational for being able to hold and eat an apple independently. And that's nothing. And that devalues when disabled people actually do something which is exceptional and do something which is out of the ordinary and is worthy of that term inspiration.
Of course.
So I think it can be harmful when it's devalued like that. I think there are times when you inspire people. So actually, I think the story of me being called inspirational for eating an apple devalues when somebody does something really exceptional, when somebody disabled or non-disabled does something that's really exceptional and out there and is worthy of that term inspiration. That's why I think, inspiration can be a really devaluing term, but especially for disabled people, I mean, I like to actually ask sometimes. Somebody says you're inspirational. What have I actually inspired you to do? So when we use the term inspiration, there's an action attached to that. So when somebody says, oh, you've inspired me, or your inspiration, I like to ask the question, okay, what have I actually inspired you to do? What action has been attached to that? Because that's what inspiration means. You're inspired to,
of course,
do something or think something. And then I think sometimes they don't have an answer. They're just like, oh, you're just to be more motivated or to do different things or try different things. And well, okay, I'm not sure that's necessarily true, but maybe it is, and that's great. And I'm not against inspiring people. That's not what I'm saying here. Yeah. If I play music, playing drums, and somebody is sat at home and they're a kid, for example, and they are disabled, they might have a limb missing or two limbs missing, and they've been told that it's too difficult for them to play a musical instrument or do something, especially if they're playing drums, they want to play drums, and they see my video and they think actually it is possible, and they prove to someone it is possible and they do it. Great. I'm overjoyed with that outcome. I think that's fantastic. I really do. I like that a lot, and that's a great outcome for me, quite frankly, and I really want to see that, and I want to see more of that. I do. That's not why I do it. That's not why I don't go out to be an inspiration to people. It just so happens that because I'm disabled and I play music, that seems to be what people like to do. And that's great. I think potentially another harmful aspect of that can be if a person who isn't disabled sees what I do and sees that and say, okay, oh, if he can do it, I can do that. I can play drums. And I think, okay, seems harmless enough, but actually think, why do you think you can do it? Do you think you can do it because I'm disabled and you're not disabled?
Mm.
That automatically means that you think you can now do it because
Right.
I can do it. That's not necessarily, I don't think that's necessarily the case. What if you are not disabled? You know, you can hold the sticks in a traditional way, for example, on the drums and play. But what if you have no sense of rhythm whatsoever?
Mm.
What if you don't have that inclination? What if you don't want to practice? What if you don't want to play? What if you don't have that mindset to do it and you don't have that skill? And yeah, if he can do it, I can do it is not applicable there because they can't necessarily do it. And I think that can be a harmful thing when people aren't disabled. They say, oh, if they can do it, I can do it. That's not always the case. I think that's underestimating disabled people and saying they can do it just because they're not disabled. That's enough for them to be able to do it. I don't agree with that at all. Music doesn't really play a part into my full-time work.
Mm.
I currently work as, like I said, I currently work as the access lead, access officer, senior access officer, access lead for a county council,
Yeah.
and essentially all I do is oversee the borough and make sure that people who are disabled have have the best possible services as possible, and change the attitude from within as well. So change the attitude within for about for staff
Yeah.
and councillors and people like that. So that's for I'm looking out for disabled staff and councillors as well as looking out for disabled residents. And I love it. I do love what I do. It's not as fun as playing in front of 10,000 people though, is
Yeah.
it?
What is
Live,
though? Yeah.
it's never going to be
Yeah.
as fun as that, is it? I mean, yeah, I'm being realistic about it. I can, happy to enjoy my job, and I've got to quite a senior level in it. Fortunately, I'm still looking to
Yeah.
climb the career ladder. I mean, I'm not going to now, but I could talk to you for years and years about why I think there are problems with disabled recruitment. So I think this does
Mm.
play into the music side slightly, attitudinal wise,
Please,
and that
please then. Yeah.
yeah. So with the music side, attitudinally, I want to achieve as much as somebody who is not disabled, and more so, not because of my disability, but it's not because of my disability I want to achieve, but it's also not in spite of it. I just
Mm.
want to do it. I'm disabled, and I play music, and I don't do that because of my disability, and I don't do that in spite of my disability. I just
Mm.
do it. The thing I have, and that's what I do. Basically, that's what it is. And I think that's the case in my professional life as well. So I struggle to get good high paid jobs, whereas a lot of my peers from Oxford University have succeeded in it really well, and
Mm.
I've really struggled with that. And I was just disheartened. I thought it was, first of all, thought it was something to do with me, or thought it was something to do with, you know, education or various other things what that looked like, until I started looking into sort of the systematic issues that come up with that and the social issues that come with that. I saw a disturbing article, I think it was on The Independent, that said 70% of business leaders in the UK wouldn't hire disabled people into business leadership positions for reasons that were
Mm.
completely bogus. So
Mm.
fear that they couldn't handle the pressure of the role, fear that they'd be off sick all the time, fear of all these sorts of things. And it's just not the case. I mean, as me, for an example, I've not, since starting this role with the council, been here a little while now, I've not taken a single sick day, for example. It's just,
Yeah.
it just doesn't happen. I haven't taken a single sick day. I do cope very well under pressure. Oxford exams are a pressure that are unique, I think, in their own sort of way. And
I won't bother. Yeah.
ended up doing well in those. Pressure of even, learning a song half an
Yeah.
hour before we have to go on in front of people is another pressure
Mm.
with music. And I just I don't feel that pressure in a professional environment. I thrive on it. I get bored very easily.
Mm.
So I need pressure. I need that thing to do. So it's just these bogus reasons that they don't want to hire people into leadership positions. And I'm still going for this. I still want to be in a
Mm.
leadership position. I mean, obviously, if the opportunity came around to, tour the world as a rock star, obviously I'm not going to say no about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those either corporate or public sector leadership positions they can wait, quite frankly. They can take a back seat. But being realistic, being realistic about it, I don't have these stereotypes that a lot of these business leaders think I do, and possibly what a lot of people either in music or a lot of observers in record companies or bands or music gear companies, whatever, might have. They might have these preconceptions too, and I think they don't exist, especially not with me, but also with a lot of disabled people.
So that sort of ties in when you said you wouldn't mind going off and being a rock star. I hope you don't mind. I had a look at the backlog on your social media, and I saw that you were in a band, and now I'm unsure if you're still in a band. Is that the case? Are you connected to a group now?
I've been in various bands over the years. So
If you don't mind,
go on.
do you have any stories about what's happened in the bands? Any good stories you could share?
Oh, I mean, I've been in a few bands. I made an Instagram post about this, about what crazy things have happened in gigs
Oh,
before.
go on. You'll have to tell us.
What I'm going to have to do, though, I noted them all down because I sort of diarised them. Let me just check on my. Let me just check on my feed.
Yeah, okay.
Just so I can tell the stories accurately, because I documented them as it happened. So there's a few. Okay, I got a couple of these.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've got from the more crazy gigs to the more subdued gigs where things weren't supposed to go wrong. So I'm a varied drummer, so I was playing some gospel church music in a Easter Sunday service, for example. So quite quiet, but also the music was a bit lively. But I went to get back up to the kit, after the part of the service had ended, went to get back up to the kit, fell straight through it, tripped on something, took a lot of things with me, took the whole kit down, and it made a heck of a noise. Quite frankly, it was crazy. So, cut my arm to pieces whilst I was doing so. Anyway, they started the song without me, which is fine. I was still picking myself up, and ended up. I was playing along by the third verse, and sort of somebody was holding my arm whilst I was holding some sort of tissue on it to stop the stream of blood coming out.
Oh,
and I was playing one-armed by the third verse whilst having first aid given to me.
Oh my God! What a trooper! Oh my word!
Yeah, that was fun.
I'd have passed out.
Yeah, I'll keep going. Yeah.
No, please go for it. Yeah.
No, that's what I mean. When I hurt myself, I'll keep playing. It's fine. I mean, I'll keep. Yeah, that was a good story. Quite a quiet Sunday service. Get back up to play a lively song.
Yeah.
Straight to the drum kit, bleeding, but back up playing by the third verse. So that was it. I was happy with that. Yeah, so that's one thing. I've done a few other things. So I've played bass whilst basically crowd surfing before.
Whoa,
that was quite fun. So a couple of people lifted me up, and I was, lifted up whilst in the crowd, which was pretty fun.
Sick.
A few of the venues we played have been a bit crazy. So we hired a venue that had capacity for about 50 people. I think it was a underground bar that we played at. I think about 300 people came. It was mad. It was so packed in there. So there were people on stage with us just to fit in. So that was fun. That was a bit of a sweaty gig, but that was still good fun. And in that same gig, one of the guys was crowd surfing and was raised up and hit his head on the roof and was knocked unconscious by
oh my God
surfing on the roof. So
a band member.
No, just one of the crowd. But we kept playing.
Yeah.
So we kept playing. The mood was good. He was fine. He was all right. But yeah, hit his head on the ceiling, was knocked unconscious. So that was a lot of good fun. That was quite enjoyable,
That wasn't doing gospel music again, was it? In the
no, that wasn't. As it happened, no. Fortunately, the church ceilings are much higher in there. I mean, the crowd surfing still happens, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
No.
Madmen priests.
Yeah. So that was fun. But also, another time I was playing with a jazz orchestra type thing, and it was a bit more lively. This one was. So I enjoy jazz as well. Actually, playing a bit of jazz orchestra. Well, it's called jazz orchestra. It's basically a big band gig. And somebody I was playing with, I think they're a tuba player. They were sick all over the stage and passed out basically. So a couple of us got up and helped to, we're not medically trained, but helped with the first aid that we basically know, and called an ambulance and things like that. And he was okay. He had an underlying health condition. Bless him. That was a difficult challenge for him. He had something which was a challenge for him. And he was fine, but taken to hospital was all right. But that was another bit more of a scary thing that happened in a gig. There's all sorts of stories, like me balancing on a stool that's come off basically, and if it falls off, the pointy bit of the stool goes somewhere I'd rather not mention.
Oh no!
I just balanced on that while I was playing, and then in the middle of a song, so still playing the song, making sure this stool didn't fall off, otherwise it's a pretty horrific injury.
Oh, good God.
As soon as the song ends, I stood up. I was like, okay, I need to sort this because this is going to end very badly.
Yeah. Oh,
there's a few things to pick from there of interesting stories I've had over the years playing live, so that was quite fun.
Sorted. That's good. Right. Okay. So I believe that's it. All bases covered. I suppose the only thing left to do is to say thank you very much for your time. And in future, if the series carries on, I'd love to speak to you again. I think your insight on all the stuff we talked about today has been different and also spot on, fascinating stuff. You have a brilliant story as well.
Thank you, Cameron. I really appreciate that. Appreciate you taking the time today. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. See you later.
See you. Take
Ta-ra.
care.
Ta-ra, man. Bye bye.